Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Digital Artcast. I want to say howdy to all you guys who are tuning in for the first time, and welcome back to the rest of you who are, long-time subscribers or people who've been listening for a while. Also, these episodes are great, and I'm kind of powering on, trying to do as many as I can and talk to as many different artists as I can. But of course, the recent events in the US and stuff are making it a bit more difficult to get a hold of certain people. So I thought I'd swing over this side of the pond today and try and speak to one of our European brethren. And I just want to also say quickly before we get into it that I'm very supportive of the movement that's going on in America just now, and I just want to say to all my American brethren that I hope you guys are well and staying safe out there. I know these are very trying times, but we definitely stand with you on the podcast. Moving back to our guest today. This particular guest is someone that caught my eye a while back and managed to bump into him a couple years back in Paris during the IMAG festival. It was getting held there, and just wanted to get him on for a while and talk about his process and his career. So please let me introduce, I hope I'm going to get this right, Samma van Klaarbergen.
Yeah, that's pretty close.
Yeah, okay. The closest I'm going to get, I think, is that. Yeah, I wouldn't want to have another attempt, but yeah, hopefully I didn't butcher it too much. Thanks, Samma, for coming on. Thank you for giving up your time to talk to us.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem at all. So we kind of, I mean, we didn't obviously talk at length or anything, but we were in the kind of same vicinity during the IMAG festival in 2018. I think the first time I kind of caught a glimpse of you, you were on the stairs at the moment. You were kind of showing off. It was either your portfolio or an art book you had put together. Was it something of that description?
Oh, yeah. So what I used to do when I was going to events was make kind of a booklet with my portfolio in it,
Right. Yeah.
so I could show people in some kind of a high quality standard instead
Right.
of just showing my phone.
Right.
Yeah, so I was probably showing that.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that probably makes sense. So I mean, the last couple of years have been crazy busy for you. I mean, you've been, afforded some great opportunities to work for some amazing companies, which of course we'll dive into eventually. But it all started from where you're from at the moment. You're still in the Netherlands at the moment, right? You're still working from there.
Yeah, I am. I work from my home office right now. I used to have a little office like where I would bike to, but I've always been working from this distance. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Cool. And then, so you traditionally you went to school for art specifically, right?
Well, I went to a school which wasn't really art focused. It was called Communication Systems, and it was very, very broad. So I would learn about like a ton of visual things and mostly about communication, and I could make websites and stuff and videos. But I didn't learn my skill set there.
Right. So it was more design focused then.
Yeah, basically, it was focused on the thinking behind any kind of communication.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I think I done something similar before I went to do 3D animation. I actually went to a course and it was called Visual Communication, and it was specifically graphic and web design. That was like what we were kind of getting taught. But then,
Yeah, exactly. It's
yeah,
it's very similar to that. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah. But I did switch luckily to the 3D stuff. But now, of course, I'm doing some concept illustration stuff. But yeah, I think I had this question yesterday on stream when people were talking about if I went to school for what I did. But then it was funny how I said, yeah, I went to school, but I didn't learn specifically the skills of what I'm doing
Yeah,
just yet. So
exactly.
it's very, very common because even I think, the UK and Scotland probably suffer from it, but I think a lot of European countries, including Netherlands, are the same, is that, you know, there isn't a lot of schools that will teach specifically
Mhm.
industry standard skill sets.
Yeah.
I think there is maybe one-ish in a in the Netherlands where they do entertainment design in some form. I don't know if that's the same one York and Leon went to, but I know they have like some specifics. But then it's not like widespread, right? It's not like something you can go to multiple schools for.
Yeah, exactly. I think Leon went to a bit better. A school was a bit better. My school was basically just the basics, and I think most artists I know that went to a school of a similar sort, they actually they realized they didn't know enough. when they finished, so they had to keep going and learn on their own.
Right.
And those people are the ones that are, I think, most successful now.
Yeah, of course, definitely. I think it's almost a double edged sword in this industry where it's great that you can stride your own path and learn your own skills, on your own and forge your own path in the industry. But I do feel that there's a lack of education that really needs to meet the standards of the industry. And I
Mm.
know it's because the industry moves so fast, but there is plenty of schools out there that are progressively trying to keep up with the
Yeah,
industry, and do that. Like guys like Brainstorm, Learn Squared, a lot of online stuff,
yeah,
CGMA, um, but then it's unfortunate. I think the times we went to school, a lot of that stuff was just getting started. I mean, I think ArtStation only became a thing in 2014 or
mm.
something. So it's been a long way coming, but now you see it more and more. There's almost just like too much on the internet now. There's too many online courses. There's so much
Yeah.
stuff to learn. So
There's too much. That's absolutely.
yeah. So when you were kind of leaving school, what were your initial plans? Did you have concept and illustration in the back of your mind? Was that your main goal?
Yeah, I always went in wanting to do something visual. I didn't necessarily have to be art or digital art or concept art.
Hmm.
I just wanted to do something with the visual medium.
Right.
And I always loved drawing and always loved doing all these sketches and
Hmm.
characters and environments and stuff.
Right.
But I always thought that there wasn't work in that.
Right.
I always thought, well, I have to pick something that's safe, because
Uh-huh.
if you want to do this more fantasy art related stuff, you have to
Hmm.
be either really good or just be really lucky.
Right.
And so at the end of when I finished college, or not college, my education and communication systems,
Hmm.
I kind of realized that, hey, there is something you can do here.
Right.
And then I found schoolism, I found some other stuff online,
Hmm.
and it kind of got close. So then I thought, hey, maybe I can try it.
Yeah.
Uh,
So was your first intro into the industry? So you were doing online courses basically to marry up the skills you wanted for the industry, right?
yeah, that's true. So back then, after I was finished with school, I was working at the tax office, which is completely different.
Right.
I mean, yeah,
Okay.
you can barely picture a bigger difference, I think. And I was pretty miserable. I was like, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. It's gonna make me miserable. So then I started working the least amount of hours I could, possibly, and then I
Hmm.
started doing schoolism stuff. So really getting my fundamentals in there and trying to see if I could do it. And I worked really hard on it. And after, I think, maybe two years of doing this, I started
Hmm.
just freelancing.
Right. Okay. So was that like just a solid 2 years of drawing and painting?
Yeah. So what I would do is I would work from most of the time from 8 to 12 in the morning, and then I would be free for the rest of the day. And then I would just draw like entire days.
Right. It seems crazy now that it only took you 2 years. I mean, for a lot of guys, it will take like sometimes 5 to 6. But then, of course, you were just hardcore in it, right? You were just drawing as much as you
Yeah.
could. So, um, was it any specific course that you felt tipped the balance, or anything you maybe learned that you felt was it just like a? I'm trying to think of, like, I'm maybe trying to get the specifics of your learning. Like what you were maybe doing, maybe no daily, but maybe week to week, month to month? Like, was there certain things you were focusing on, or?
Yeah, well, first of all, I wanted to do the basics. So the first one I did was digital painting by Andrew Howe, which I think is still on schoolism. So that taught me some kind of like some basic techniques and some ideas on how to approach painting. But then what was really important to me, really changed it, was Color and Light by Nathan Fowkes.
Yeah, yeah. Nathan's, oh god, I got to meet him at Lightbox in September, and yeah, he's a master of his craft. Definitely, it's a lot of people talk about that light and color courses as almost a companion to James Gurney's book, the Light and Color as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
hmm
so
I had that as well. I had that as a
kind
side
of cover to
thing.
cover. Yeah.
Yeah, and that taught me most of the basics on how to use like values and how to use color and light and different color palettes and stuff. And that was really the kind of the start of me building my fundamentals, my
Fundamentals,
my pillars.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
So you were taking, so throughout those 2 years, were you taking like any work on at all outside of kind of practice, or was it just purely just? head down in the grindstone?
I didn't take much work, also because I wasn't very good back then.
Okay.
It was just really, really
Okay.
crappy stuff.
Right.
But what happened when I started doing it,
Mm-hmm.
learning this stuff, I
Mm-hmm.
also realized that if you want to get work, you need to network in some capacity.
Right. Okay.
So what I did was I approached a local game development community, like very
Right.
small, maybe like 15 people or something,
Okay.
and I just asked them like, hey, what are you working on? Maybe I can help or something. And they asked me to come over to work at their offices, as a freelancer. It wasn't paid or anything. It was just, hey, you want a spot to work with us.
Experience and kind of getting your foot in the door, and yeah, I
Exactly.
mean, and I think that's yeah. I was going to say, I think that's one of the key things that has helped me definitely. It's just been the amount of networking I've done, but also just the fact that sometimes you're willing to do things for free. I mean, I see that now, but I think it was a couple of years ago I got my first shot at working on a game, Mask of Semblance, and at the time I was like, oh, I need to think about how much I'm going to get paid because I need to
Hmm.
pay my bills. But now at this point, I'm like, as long as I have enough money to pay the little bills I have, everything else is fine. I'm quite happy just to work on stuff for
Hmm.
free, and I think it is it's an unfortunate part of the industry, but I think initially you have to be able to put yourself out there as a freelance agent for free, and then after you've done some work that can be measured, then of course you can come back and then think, well, now I want to be
Hmm.
paid for it. But yeah, that initial putting yourself out there is something that not a lot of people will probably do. So
Yeah.
proud to you
Yeah,
for that.
I think there's something to be said about pursuing things that teach you stuff more so than that give you money.
Yes.
Like that this what you just said about if I have enough money and I can afford it, that's been my go-to approach. I think even now, where I don't really spend that much money, so I can hold out for quite some time if I don't have any paying jobs, and that gives me a lot of freedom.
To kind of pick the ones you want to work on.
Exactly, and also I can pick the ones that I think will teach me stuff.
Yes, that are more impactful to your career or something
Exactly.
that you feel
Yeah.
will push you forward. Yeah. So then that was your kind of first smaller company you worked on. Was it quite a big dev at the time, or was it just a kind of small indie dev? Or
Oh, it was actually a couple
okay.
devs. Some students as well that just graduated from game design
Hmm.
schools.
Right.
I think there were like 3 or 4 companies that were actually already doing work,
Okay. Right.
and so they would often just approach me because I was pretty much the only artist back then.
Right.
They would approach me like, "Hey, can you do something simple for us like this?"
Right.
And I would do it. The pay wasn't like super good. It was, I think, pretty minimum wagey,
Okay. Right. Yeah.
if there was even any pay. But it was good enough. Like back then, I was like, "Oh, I can make something out of this. This is a good start, right?"
Yeah. I mean, like as long as you're kind of paying your rent or you're able to afford like a loaf of bread, then you're quite happy just to be
Yeah.
content with what you've got. So yeah. So then you were kind of moving through these indie devs. What was your first kind of, I suppose, your big break? Like maybe like your first maybe major production you worked on or something that was that Spider-Man for you, or was there some before that?
Yeah, I think I would be Spider-Man.
Right.
Because
Okay.
I'd worked on like many different projects before, but most of them were pretty indie, pretty small time. Like there were Kickstarter stuff or something, or a portrait for somebody. But yeah, I think Insomniac was my big, where I realized like, oh, I did it. I
Yeah. A major
yeah,
kind of publisher
exactly.
contacted me and I'm working for them. So was that specifically through networking? Was that through an event or
That was actually just luck. Well,
okay?
luck and because I asked the art director of Insomnia, Jacinda, I asked her later, how did you find me? Why did you approach me? And she said, well, basically, I went to ArtStation, I looked for a portrait artist, and I saw one of your portraits. And I thought, well, maybe this guy can do it.
Oh, cool. Well, I mean, like,
So that
well,
was,
yeah,
huh?
that is a very that doesn't happen every day, right? Just somebody just like
No.
looking for you and finding something really randomly, and yeah, that's crazy. I mean, like, but then I think ArtStation in a sense is a good thing for a good system for that, where even when people are looking for talent. I know that even now, like in the search bar, you can search specifically by discipline, by country, by city you live. whatever. So I mean, it's a great tool for finding work people to work with and companies to work for. So then you were kind of contacted them back in the day. This would have been before the game was released. So I'm trying to remember now. Was it last year or 2018 it was released?
I think it was, yeah, I think it was 2018.
Yeah. So I mean, an instance then, they would have contacted you a while before that. I'm assuming, or a little, maybe 12 months to a year, or was it kind of last minute, or
How do you mean? Before the
before the game was released? Like, were you working on it like maybe in 2017, 2016? Were they contacting you that far back to work on Spider
Yeah, I
Man?
think it was in 2017 somewhere, because they
Right.
were they
Okay.
were like planning ahead, and they said it's a very flexible position. You can just take your time. I'm like, that's
Okay.
good, so I can take extra time.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
fantastic. Yeah, I'll just take as much time
yeah,
as I need. But no, but that's good though as well because I mean they're a very big publisher. Obviously, got huge
exactly.
deadlines. So
Yeah,
the fact that the pressure wasn't really on you, well, of course it was, but not as maybe as intense as you thought it was going to be initially.
yeah.
So,
It was actually one of the most chill jobs I've ever had because
hmm
she would just our director would just say, "Oh, we need this and this,"
hmm
and not even give me a time where it had to be finished. She would just
right,
kind of trust me, like, "Oh, I'll work on this when I can, as soon as I can,"
all
and then
right,
I would
interesting.
send updates and stuff. So yeah, I think having this experience really taught me on how the good side of the like a AAA art industry.
Yeah, I was going to say because a lot of people have these fears. I think especially when American companies contact you on the bigger AAA scale that you're going to be hounded for deadlines, or you're
Hmm.
going to be wrangled in and made to do certain things.
Yeah,
But
massive crushes
um,
or crunches.
yeah, of course. And I have heard from. I mean, I actually done a mentorship, like a kind of 3D tutorial thing with Ryan Beno, who is one of the environment artists at Insomniac, and he talked about how he just loves it there. He thinks it's one of the best studios he's ever worked at. It's a very chill atmosphere. They've just moved to a new studio, so they're kind of setting that up, or well, have been setting that up before the virus. But yeah, he was just saying he just loved the whole vibe of working there and loved the people. And it's very rare you hear that in a lot of big studios. People really loving where they work. So, which is a thing we were talking about the other night actually about how. I mean, my dream's always been Blizzard or working across in California, but the way the US looks at the moment, it's eerily a bit more a worrying to look at it and think about, um, making a career over there now because just the way the country is. But I think I've been looking more now towards maybe working in mainland Europe or back here in the UK. So. But then I think is that been a kind of plan of yours all along? Have you always wanted to work with the kind of bigger American publishers, or were you not really fussed?
Well, at the start, I think everyone's dream is to work at one of the big studios, like work on Assassin's Creed or like at Guerrilla for Dutch people. I think Guerrilla Games is the go-to. This is my goal. But I learned very soon that in AAA studios, you're just such a small part of the pipeline. So there's a big chance you just be doing the same thing all over time. And the crunch and the pressures can be really high. So very soon I was like, maybe I don't really need to be this specific in my goals, but there's also a lot of like mid-range studios that are like really good at this.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a few. I mean, one of my friends, Johan, shout out Johan, he was initially at one of his kind of bigger studios when he done his internship. So he was
Hmm.
working at EA Dice at the time, but then he's now moved on to Shark Mob in
Right.
Malmo in Sweden, and smaller studio, maybe smaller to mid size, but then he talks about how the atmosphere there is very different than like working at Dice, for instance, or any
Hmm.
of the big E projects. Like he says, he prefers that kind of smaller, more intimate studio setting, and I think that's almost something that a lot of
Yeah.
people are seeking out now is those studios that you feel more at home and like
Yeah.
you feel less corporate in a sense because I've always felt with concept art, like when art meets industry, and that's when the creativity goes to die in my eyes. But um, it's a very hard balance to strike, I think, because you want to be making a profit. You obviously want to deliver and make something that keeps the company afloat, but at the same time, you don't want to make everybody feel like they're just shipping things in a container, a factory almost like experience. So, um,
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know if that,
Well, you want to find something meaningful, I
yeah,
think, also because if you work in a studio and you can have a say on the creative process and some of the creative
right,
choices, that to me that's much more meaningful than just doing a like a production
yeah,
line and just get your props out or get your stuff
Yeah.
out.
Um,
But I think there's something there for everyone. I think some people love this
mhm,
this
mhm.
production, but I just love finding something meaningful in each of these small things.
Right, yeah,
And
and it's not really specifically you wouldn't say like, oh, it's got to be a game or it's got to be, like you said, it's just
no,
whatever the project is, whatever you feel challenges you or changes you as an artist or makes you look more into your creative process. I mean, like I know
mhm.
just checking because I didn't know about it, but just checking your ArtStation credits the other night, you worked on a TV production recently, right? Undone. That was something that you done
Yeah,
recently. So was that a lot different to like say working on Spider-Man? Was that similar kind of atmosphere or?
yeah, it was actually very different because, well, mainly because in Insomniac I worked directly with the art director. I was just working from my home office,
Okay,
so I
right.
wouldn't really talk to the team much. Not at all, actually. I would just talk to the art director, and she would just give me stuff to do and give me feedback, which was very, very relaxed. But then through my network, I got the job at Submarine, which is in Amsterdam, which is I think 3 hours away from my house. So I had to go there by train once a week. So partly I would also work from home, but then I would also go there and just talk to the people and have talks about what would look right and stuff. So it was much more like a collaboration. Um, and I think these kinds of different dynamics are really interesting to me.
Yeah, I
Y-
mean, especially when you get a chance to go and speak to people in the flesh, and it's a very different
Yeah,
conversation to somebody sending an email or just quickly talking to you over, Skype or Discord or
exactly.
whatever.
Yeah, that's why I also
Yeah.
met up with the art director from Insomniac, Jacinda, a few times
Hmm.
because it's just really nice to have a face to the person you're communicating with.
I can imagine. But then was she? She was from the US, right? So she was working in a studio in America. Or was she local to Netherlands as
No,
well?
she's working in Burbank in Los Angeles, but she would come to like Gamescom in Germany,
Oh, okay,
so
right,
we
yeah.
meet there,
Ah,
and she
right.
would also come to Amsterdam to visit Gorilla, and then I'm like, oh, maybe we can have dinner or something.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Fantastic. Oh, that's really nice. Yeah, which is great because I mean, yeah, like that side of the world is a trek to get
yeah,
across and meet most of our European brethren. Like it's, I mean, when I went out to Lightbox, I think it was like something like nearly 12 hours to Chicago, and then like another 4 hours to LAX. So it was a daunting flight to say the least. And then coming back was even worse, obviously. Like it was just, oh my god. So yeah, so and then did you get a chance to go out to Insomniac Games in Burbank? Did you get to visit the studio at all over
I
there
was
or?
actually planning to. It's funny that you mentioned it
Right.
because I let me check the date. Yeah, I would have been there right now if it wasn't for the pandemic.
The
I was
virus.
planning to go there for a month, like the area, and visit my brother who lives there as well.
Okay, right. Interesting. Yeah.
And just visit the studio. And I was looking for maybe going to Concept Design Academy in LA.
Ah, okay, right, interesting. Yeah, I've always wanted to visit Brainstorm out
Yeah,
there
yeah,
as well.
that too.
Like it seems like a really good school. I never I never got a chance to visit Nomon either when I was across there. I really wanted
Yeah.
to, but I never knew they'd done tours. And then I think I was coming back, somebody was like, "Oh, you can just could have just went in and saw the main kind of visitor area. They would have let you in." I was like, "Oh shit, I never knew." But I got to visit both Blizzard and Riot
Oh,
Games,
that's
so that
cool.
was like that was good,
Yeah.
good enough for me. So but yeah, like so again, interesting when it comes to talk about like your foundations, your fundamentals, your training, the jobs you've done. I take it, are you still pursue? I mean, like, stupid question, obviously, but I mean, you probably are obviously still pursuing more skill sets. But I noticed you've done more VR stuff recently as well, sketch wise. Is that something you're now trying to integrate into your pipeline?
Yeah, actually, I partly already did put it in my pipeline,
Right.
and this is what we talked about before, where it's really nice to be able to learn and take that time and not be picky about stuff. Because at this point, I'm in such a position that I can just do my own stuff if I want. I don't really need to get jobs to like pay my rent and stuff because I live very cheaply. Let's put it that way. I don't spend much, but that gives me a
Yeah,
lot of freedom to just try and find ways to learn more and get better,
of
and just
course.
take
Yeah,
jobs that
yeah.
are appealing to me. So
Right.
I'm still
Okay.
doing some like small jobs for animation studios, like set design and stuff. Some posters, like illustrations. But most of my time now goes to like experimenting and improving my skills, and then later I'll see where I end up.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
but then I think it's good though also that you push that fundamental idea of always improving, always changing, always moving forward,
yeah,
especially with VR, because I think it is now so accessible to people that it's almost it's like when people were using 3D initially in concept or photo bashing, and there was some people who were like, oh, that's no for me or whatever. But then
mm,
I think anything that can free up your creativity and push your ideas without any more constraints, I think is always something you should be open to. Especially,
absolutely. Yeah.
are you using the Quest, or what VR unit are you using at the
I'm
moment?
using the Oculus S, I think. I think that's the newest one. I'm not sure.
Right. Okay. Yeah, no, I was just interested because at Lightbox, Yama was showing off the Quest, which is great because it's like a wireless thing, so there's no cameras or setup or anything. You literally just put the headset on and grab the controllers, and you're in it.
Yeah, the one I have is the only difference is that there's a wire coming out of the back.
Right.
But I
Okay.
just put it in my pocket, and
Yeah.
that's all good.
Yeah, yeah.
So
No, it was. I think it was just more interesting because where we were at the time, there was nothing around us. But then he had it just in a small case, and could just bring it out and use it whenever. And I
oh
think
yeah,
that's such a free. It's almost like carrying a sketchbook with you in essence. Like it's
yeah,
a
it
very
is.
free thing. So then interesting as well that you're doing more animation stuff. I've always found that I don't know why, but I think I've always seen your stuff as more animation focused. I think the stories you tell or the world you've created, in my eyes, spark more enthusiasm and imagination for animations. Is that something you would want to do more of in the future as well?
Yeah, that's actually where I'm going towards.
Right.
More animation heavy stuff. I love doing color key work. So that's very simple stuff based on like moods and colors, which doesn't have to be very detailed, but it adds so much to a scene if you have interesting color schemes and stuff.
Yeah, of course. Keyframe stuff is like, I mean, so huge. I mean, even back when I think some of the initial stuff I saw Mache Kutera, and he was doing a lot of keyframes for like a lot of the Marvel stuff, and then a lot of Andy Park's work, and now of course Yana's working over there as well. But like that stuff is just, I think, so moving, so energetic, so full of life. And I think even like there was one you put out recently was Test Flight. It was like two characters in front of, yeah, like that for me was like something I would have seen like sitting in an art book for like DreamWorks or Disney or Pixar. So it feels very at home for those kind of things. So is that also like a small like dream as well? Like the bigger animation studios in America, like the DreamWorks Pictures and stuff like that. Is that something you would want to cross over into eventually?
Yeah, I'd love to try that. Of course, it depends on like how what the work load is and how they're treating people and stuff, like we talked about before. But yeah, I'd love to work on a more feature film stuff, more animation, because I think there's a big difference between game art and more animation type art.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely.
like animation art is much more expressive, I feel, because
Yeah,
game art is
you're trying to capture that gesture, right?
exactly, yeah. And that's also
Yeah.
that's maybe nice to bring in the VR again, because when I was confronted with maybe the idea that I have to go and learn 3D for my process,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, I'm not sure if this works for me because it's also very rigid and takes so long and it's not
Mm-hmm.
very interesting at the start. But with
Right.
VR, you can basically use your 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 shapes in the motion you make with your body to make
Mm-hmm.
these models. It makes them
Wow.
very
Cool.
much more interesting right away, I think.
Kind of full of life, almost animated at the start, and
Yeah.
then yeah, I know it was always incredible when we saw Goro Fujita when he was doing some of the demos at THU on
Quill, yeah.
Quill, I think
Hmm.
was the soft, which is great because they have kind of animation built in it. So he was always doing these, even before teaching, he was doing these 30-minute sketches where he was taking a break at lunch and he was drawing something every day. And like the coolest, shortest animations, but the fact that he could make them in such a small time frame, with so little constraints was incredible to see. And now, obviously, now he's doing even greater stuff, and Quill has came on leaps and bounds. But I think it's definitely getting to a point where even with Unreal, unveiling their new system and all that, like it's getting to a point where like, imagination is like your only limit in your work. As long as you have certain tools, you can make anything you want. There is no what's the word? There's no limit basically
Yeah.
to what you can create.
That was
So
actually
yeah.
one of my reasons for getting VR sets. I was watching Goro, and I was talking to him actually on in Paris
Mhm.
at the iMic
Right.
festival, and I was like, I wanna see if I can use this. So then I also tried Quill, but that was, like you said, much more animation focused, much more about movement, and I'm still making like still pictures. So I had to deviate a little bit, but yeah, Goro's work is a big inspiration in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. What's the program you're using at the moment, and what specifically are you using for your 3D stuff?
Right now I'm using Gravity Sketch,
Okay, interesting.
which is yeah, it's really nice because it makes simple shapes,
Right.
and I want to make my images. I want to make them from a base of something simple and readable,
Right.
and then work from there instead of making something very complicated. I wrote a blog about this. I'm not sure if you have you seen this by any
Yes, yes.
chance?
I broke it down I think a week or two ago when I was kind of reading through it, just about your breakdown of how you made your 3D shapes and painted over the top. And
Yeah.
yeah, but which is a process I've been using actually recently. There was a piece I posted literally only yesterday. I sketched out or illustrated Sulfuris, the Ragnaros's hammer from Warcraft.
Uh-huh.
But I built the 3D base in Maya first, and then posed and lit it before I started painting. So like a lot of information was already there
Yeah.
before I'd laid down my layers. So yeah, like I mean, I've definitely known about the process of how good 3D is for overpaints for a while, mostly because I done 3D initially in my career. So
All
now
right. Yeah.
moving to 2D, it's almost like a natural thing where I thought those years of doing 3D was going to be a waste, but in fact it's actually helping my painting more and more.
Yeah.
So it's definitely, I think, a key step in a lot of people's careers now, especially for concept and illustration, is that 3D photos, whatever you need,
Hmm.
VR, everything's a tool. Your foundations are always key,
Exactly.
but
Yeah.
the way you express those can change. Yeah, so yeah, it's an interesting. But then is that a thing I don't know how you feel about using. I mean, because people will say. I mean, actually, probably most people who aren't in the industry will usually say, 3D seems like it's cheating or you're skipping a step.
Yeah.
But then, for us, we understand why it's important and why it's a good
Hmm.
thing. Is that something that you come across with your work? Do you feel like people will judge you because of the 3D implementation, or do you feel like it's just a necessary step?
Well, it's interesting to think about this because you
Hmm.
say people from outside the industry, they all think you're cheating. But then I think, is it important for those people to see you in that way, that you're not cheating, that you're actually doing all this? Because I think, and this comes back in how I view networking as well, the most important people to kind of impress are the ones that are in the industry. So if you use 3D and if you use like some kind of cheat, but it makes you so much faster, I think people in the industry will actually probably appreciate it more because that will save them money. You know?
Yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah, I think it's interesting to also make that point, although it's obvious to you and me, but there will be people who listen to this podcast who aren't in industry or who are
Mhm.
trying to get in the industry, who haven't heard this from a professional because, they think if they don't hear it from guys like you
Oh
or
yeah,
me, then, it must not be true. But it's a very, anybody who's
yeah,
listening now, understand this. It's a very important step to use 3D in your work, even if you're doing 2D paintings. So, I mean, like you can in essence draw perspective and everything from hand because you can do that stuff. But like you said, it's when production then enters the realm, you have to think about how much time you're spending on something, and you can't, clog the whole. It's mostly not because you're trying to be, oh cool, look at me because I can do things so fast, but you have like a whole studio sometimes waiting on just you. So you have to make sure that you're not holding that train up, and making
yeah.
everybody else late. So you know,
And I think, yeah, I think there's also something to be said about the way likes and followers are viewed right now, because it looks like everyone's kind of aiming for, oh, I want to have so many followers and so many likes on all my posts. Then the most stuff you do for studios, I don't know if you have that as well. It's mostly technical stuff, like, oh, how is this built and how does this relate to the other thing? And it's not interesting to watch, but it's very useful in the pipeline of a studio.
yes, of course, yeah, and I think that's like you said, it's I couldn't put it better myself when you talked about how your goal isn't to impress people outside the industry. You're wanting to impress people inside the industry. Like you say, sharing stuff, getting likes, that's all great and everything. But when you want to work in games, film, whatever, you need to make sure that the people who work on those things see your stuff and are interested in your pipeline. Whereas if you're doing it for a stream or whatever, or your careers, whatever outside the industry, then sure, use whatever you want. But then most people know that time is money, but that also doesn't mean that what you work on will be rushed or it has to be of poorer quality because you're not taking the time to draw things. Like, as long as your fundamentals are key and foundations are solid, then the 3D is just a tool to assist. It's not something that's crippling, like it's holding you up, almost. Like, you can still do those things without those tools. It's you know you don't have to rush your work. It's just that it makes it just that a little bit 10% more perfect. If you've got exact perspective or your light is very solid, then it means those images breathe a new life, or are more enjoyable to look at because the information is so correct.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think this is a very tricky part for a lot of artists as well. And I talked to a lot of my friends about this, like how if they want more likes and followers on any social media, they start aiming their work towards getting that, which is, I think, the wrong way to approach it. What I try to do, and I'm try to be very aware of this, is try to make my work initially for myself, to challenge myself and do something that I love doing. But then secondly, to maybe be a better part of a production, like be fit in there better and show that. And then thirdly is, if people like it, they can like it
Yeah, of course.
on social media.
Yeah, the like is the afterthought. It's not that you're making things
Mhm.
for the audience specifically. You're making it for you. But then if people
Yeah,
also like it, then that's just a bonus. That's something extra. So
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah.
that gets you some like people noticing you.
Hmm.
That's all good and all. And I know some people who are actually they're pretty good and they have a lot of following on social media,
Right.
and they get worked through all that visibility.
Yep.
But there's different ways to approach this. But the way I do it is just make sure I enjoy it first, and then
Hmm.
see if I can put it in a production somewhere and see if
Hmm.
production people like it and appreciate it, and then the people outside.
Yeah, comes kind of secondary to that. But then I think it's also a thing where you initially draw things even before you're in the industry, right? You're not even technically drawing things for industry. You're trying to just make things that you're proud of,
Yeah.
things that you think will be worthy of going in your portfolio. Like, you post so many sketches up, and then eventually you make something you're like, oh, I'm really proud of
Hmm.
that. I really like that. I enjoy that. And then, like you said, if people then come from companies and they're like, we want to now employ you, that you're like, oh, that's great.
Yeah.
I made that for me, but the fact that you want to give me money for it now is even better. So, I think even Leon said that at one point when we were talking about, how they get into the industry and stuff like that. And he just basically said, because we were talking about him using Cinema 4D and doing his overpaints, and he was like, "Yeah, man, like I just made things until
Yeah.
eventually somebody wanted to pay me for it. So, like, there's
Yeah.
no hard and fast secret. Like, there's no science behind it. You just keep making things, and then
Hmm.
eventually somebody will pay attention to you. So,
Yeah.
I
And
think it's yeah,
of course, there's also like a modicum of luck involved and some kind of
hmm,
networking that people actually get to know you, because communication and how you appear and stuff is also important for people to see.
yeah,
But in the end,
yeah, of course,
it's just doing what you love and showing that you love it,
yes,
and just keeping
yeah,
it up. Um,
yeah, definitely. I think if you've got to it's something you've got to try and keep with you throughout the whole industry because it's also the reason why a lot of people will do personal art because if you get tied into a big studio, you're doing work all
mhm.
day that's maybe like the opposite of what you really love to do, then you have to find the time outside of your work to do those things because that's like your creative sanity. Your the things you want to do aren't always the things that people will want to pay you to do. You may be like, oh well, we want to pay you, but we don't want you to make this specific thing. We want you to make something else. So you still have to have the creative outlet where you're posting your stuff up, and you're still getting, I mean, like, even a lot of your portrait stuff that you've done that's maybe not specifically for work, but it's just something that you love to do, right? It's something
That
you
Yeah,
want.
that's exactly it. And
Yeah.
a lot of people just kind of tell me like portraits don't belong in a professional portfolio, but I just love doing them, and I think they look good,
Yeah.
and so it's fine. And I think there's a difference in how you approach it. Because when I talk to students and they ask me like, "Oh, what should I put in my portfolio? What should I
Right.
show?"
Yeah.
I would say put some kind of 15 maybe of your best pieces in there,
Right.
but show them show the stuff that you love doing, so you can get hired to do that instead of posting stuff that you think is needed in the
We'll get you
industry.
work.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It's like a huge thing. I think that we've almost talked about like at length in here, but to your first point, I was going to just quickly say the whole portrait thing. I think portraits of people is great, especially if you want to make a career making portraits or doing people. I
Hmm.
think it is a free exercise to try and capture somebody's essence in a painting. It's almost
Yeah.
a test of like your skills and if you can do them justice, because obviously if you paint something and it's terrible, then it's like it's almost an insult to the person. You don't want to
Yeah.
show them. Because I actually done a photo study of do you know Jack? If I say Jack, do you know what I'm talking about, like Jacqueline
Yeah.
Natalia
Yeah. I know
Canetta.
her. Hmm.
um yeah, so I done a painting. I'll send you it later. I done a portrait study of one of our recent photos, and I was always totally like nervous, like sent it to her, like, "Oh, I done a painting. I hope you like it." But she was like, "Oh my god, I love it. This
Yeah.
is incredible." Um, and I've actually just added it to my ArtStation, even though it's like a study. I've been like, you know what,
Yeah.
fuck it. Like I really enjoyed doing it. I think it's a really accomplished piece. I don't care. So up it
I
went.
totally get that.
Um,
Yeah.
so, so yeah, I totally feel you on that the whole portrait side. The second piece I was talking about was doing things in putting things into your portfolio that you feel will get you a job or will get you work, versus doing the things you love. And again, back to Leon's comment, he was all he was putting up was things that he
Mm.
loved making and things that he was interested in making. And then he wasn't putting up maybe orcs in armor or whatever but gets you work for specific companies,
Yeah.
but like like the thing he was aiming for was like what I like to do, what I enjoy to do. So I think that's almost a whole conversation topic in
Oh,
itself about
absolutely.
making sure your portfolio, because there's guys I know years ago, they talked about how was a 3D guy, and he was like, yeah, I used to make like guns because they were easy, or like things that I thought people wanted to see, but I really wanted to make a lot more organic stuff like trees,
Mm.
vegetation, rocks. And then he got hired at a company where basically they'd saw his portfolio, and then they had to spend days, weeks, months making rifles and guns and flintlock pistols, and it was like, oh god,
Yeah.
I hate this. So like, yeah, it's a thing where you really have to be conscious about what you're putting up, especially when you approach jobs, being understanding that if you're going to want to make one specific thing, you want to make sure your portfolio has the majority of that stuff
Mm.
in it, because if you don't, then you run the risk of getting hired to do a job that you'll
Yeah.
not enjoy. And that itself is a defeat for you as a person. So
Definitely. Yeah. I met a guy once, and he asked me the same thing, and I was about to tell him the same thing I just said.
right,
But he had very very dark stuff in his portfolio,
right,
and I was thinking like, if you keep this up and you love this stuff,
hmm,
that's one thing. But in the end, studios do have to hire you. So I'm like,
right,
maybe do something in between. So it's very tough because some people are also not that financially capable. They actually need a continuous flow of
of
jobs,
course,
so
yeah,
to say.
yeah,
So there's always a middle ground. But I think in the end, you do have to do this work for more than 40 hours a week,
right,
maybe 60, maybe more.
yeah.
So you have to keep yourself from burning out as well.
Yeah, burnout, that's also a really key point. I think it's why we have this just generation of people, millennials especially, like, we're so burnt out now, and there's
Hmm.
so much depression in the world, I think, because
Yeah.
the grind was like all that people focus on for years and years and years. It was like, you've got to work hard, you've got to work crazy hours and
Hmm.
get really good jobs and get a house and get a mortgage. But now, like, I feel we're coming into this age where, like, you and I have discovered, and I think I was the complete opposite when I was an engineer, because I had a really good job, I had really good money, I easily paid a lot of my bills and could buy whatever I wanted,
Hmm.
and it almost bred this like consumer mentality on me, where I just kept buying and buying and buying and spending my money on
Yeah.
stuff. But now, switching phases, and I went back to school, obviously, left my 30 odd £1,000 a year a job to go back and be a student, and be dirt poor, and then spend years doing that. It's almost taught me the value of not having a lot or not focusing on
Hmm.
a lot of material stuff. And now, I'm very content with minimal. stuff. I say minimal stuff. I still like to occasionally buy the odd statue, but like,
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
we all? Don't we all? But yeah, the more materialistic stuff is like I'm not really too bothered about, fancy clothes or
yeah.
a car or whatever. It's just I would rather be happy inside, and I think like
That's so important.
yeah,
I
yeah,
think what you're saying now is also something I've been thinking a lot about recently.
hmm
I don't know if you know about the kind of minimalist approach to this,
yeah.
where you're just kind of chucking out stuff that you think you don't need or
There's a
that
not a
don't make
word
you
for
happy.
it in Dutch. There's like a it's like a way of life where like you live off like not a lot or uh, what's that, dear? Sarnik? Does that sound?
Zuinig.
Ah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's kind of it's in the lines of thrifty or
Right,
you don't really need that much.
right. Okay, yeah,
That's exactly kind of how I like to live
yeah.
because the world is so big right now and there's so much coming at you.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need all these things, all these things trying to get your attention.
Right.
So I just try and keep it somewhat manageable,
Mm-hmm.
and then know what I own, what I have,
Yes.
know what I love,
Uh huh.
and if I keep all this like um, in my view, in my perspective, and
Right.
don't lose anything, I think that keeps me sane in the end.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's. I mean, I remember one of my friends. She had a philosophy where she wanted to be able at any point to pack up her life into one suitcase and then
Yeah.
leave. You know what I mean? So I think that's where we're getting to, especially when I used to watch a lot of travel bloggers or people who would, do a lot of trips around the world or,
Mm.
go explore or do other things. They were always able to just like pack their life into one bag
Yeah.
and just move with the current. And I think that's sometimes a better mentality or a way of living. Like you see people now who like make homes out of cabinets or
Oh yeah, I
yeah,
love that.
like traveling the world in an old school bus that they've retrofitted with couches and stuff. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's like the life. It's like we all want that kind of life, right?
Yeah.
It's always a balance, and I think it's great, especially if you do 2D concept specifically or any 2D visual development because the world's your office in essence, right? You can kind of, as long as you've got a
Yep.
laptop or a computer or something to draw on or an iPad, whatever, um,
Hmm.
you can pretty much do anything. I mean, I know one of the guys we saw at industry workshops. Do you know Rich Carey at all? Rich?
No, it doesn't ring a bell.
Yeah, so he was a really good, amazing artist. In fact, at Creative Assembly for a lot of years, working on all the Total War stuff, and
Oh.
he actually was originally a 3D character artist, and then moved over to concept by kind of teaching himself drawing and painting as well. So he switched
Oh, that's cool.
roles, incredible. But then he left a couple of years ago, Creative Assembly, to just kind of freelance. And then I think it was 2018. He just was like, he took his iPad Pro and he was like, I'm going to Japan. Just left, went to Japan because they have a thing like if you're under 30, you can, and if you can sustain yourself,
Yeah.
you can go and stay there for a year. You don't have to get like a specific visa or anything. You can just go and get like an extended tourist thing.
Mm.
And now he's kind of like been there enough times that he's learning the language. He's trying to get into the culture, and I think he's eventually going to try and work across there. But then he's done all his concept work and all his work for Riot Games the last couple of years just from his iPad Pro,
Yeah, that's
so
amazing.
solely in Procreate. So it's one of these things where like yeah, if you just want to get out and explore the world, then there's more and more opportunities to do that now.
Mm.
Makes me really fucking jealous of him though, because god damn what I wouldn't give to be touring Japan right now. But yeah, it's
Could still happen.
yeah, I mean, totally, man. Like whatever. I mean, I'm moaning a great, but I'm 35 in August. But people always say that age is nothing in this industry, and
Yeah, who cares?
yeah, exactly. Nobody gives a shit. So yeah, yeah. So then moving forward into like the future of your career. Obviously, you can't talk about specifics of maybe things you're working on, but is it
Mm.
like something where you feel like there's a goal for you at the end of it, or there's something you want to achieve moving forward, or your kind of next like mantle or next step up? Is there something that you're aiming for, or is it just to continue just making awesome art?
Yeah, I think that's one of the main things.
Right.
But I do have a personal project that I'm working on,
Okay.
so the first goal in that sense is to finish that.
Right.
After that, I want to work for more animation type stuff,
Okay.
for feature films or animation in general.
Right.
And it's all pretty open.
Right.
I don't really have any specific plans.
Yeah.
Just see where it goes. But as long as I can apply my skills in
Hmm.
an environment that is challenging to me and
Hmm.
like teaches me stuff,
Hmm.
and that has nice people, because that's, I think, also very important.
Yes.
That's pretty much all I need,
Yeah.
because I don't really mind uh, not working for the bigger studios.
Right.
I just want to be doing my stuff
Yes.
with the cool people in a nice environment, and that's enough for me.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And is also just even on the subject of travel we're talking about. You've been in Amsterdam. Is it something you would want to maybe try and get out and see other parts of the world and work in different areas as well? Or
Yeah, I'd love to do that.
yeah.
And I think I could as well, because, like you said, the 2D art world is very. You can do it anywhere you want if you have
Yes.
the gear you can take with you.
Yeah.
I'm not a very seasoned traveler in that sense.
Okay.
I went to some art events and stuff,
Right.
and that's all good. But living in a different country, that's kind of new.
It's a different thing
Uh,
altogether. Yeah. Definitely.
yeah, that's a could. I would love to do it, but it would be a big challenge for me,
Yeah. I
because
know.
I'm a good hermit,
Oh, right.
so to
Okay.
say.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I was going to say because there's all these. I remember seeing, was it a year back or a couple of years ago? There was these videos of people who were moving to like Bali and other places where
Oh yeah.
it's like ridiculously cheap to live. Like it's almost pennies per week to live in some places, and these
Yeah,
guys
it's
are
cool.
getting $1,000, $2,000 a month, and they're just like living like kings across there. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Digital nomads, right? You call them?
yeah, yeah, exactly. That's what it is. Yeah, and I think that's what a lot of us can also do now because you're living in this industry in this time where people are um very switched on to technology and are very aware.
Mm,
Like a lot of like even like YouTubers, for example, who can now tour and blog and do all these things across the world because
right.
their skill sets are things that are mobile, that things that they can do wherever they want to be, wherever they want to be in the world, they can just pick up a
Mm,
laptop and go wherever they want. And as long as they're connected to the internet, then doesn't matter. It's
yeah.
so yeah, it's a
I think
very
especially now, it's much easier to work remotely, because everyone's doing it now, and they're realizing that you can just do this. It's no
yeah,
problem.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very open career. I think if you're, I mean, obviously you've got to put time in like everybody, but then if you do, then the future of your work is then very open. It's hard initially because you're having to learn so much, but then once you have those skills, once you have that skill set, and you have something that's very sellable to a company, then yeah, you can just work
Yeah.
wherever you want. I think it's also testament to companies like One Pixel Brush who will hire guys who are like 17 in like
Oh yeah.
Afghanistan because they're amazing artists, and
Yeah, and I think that's the key in this, that as long as you're good and you can communicate well, which I
yes.
think is also very important,
Mhm.
you can get to work anywhere.
Yeah, definitely. I think as long as you have the, I mean, people always sometimes they get the question constantly of like how do I find work or how do I approach people for work, and I'm always like, the people I know who have work, they've never, I mean, not always, but like most of them haven't sought it out. Like if you're good
No, I
enough,
haven't.
yeah, well, if you're good enough, people always feel will find you. You know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
talked about earlier where you made the portrait stuff, the art director saw you, hit
Mm.
you up for, so I mean, I feel that's always the case, is that don't be worried too much initially about where to find the work or how to get it. Just
No,
focus
no.
on making the work, and then the work will come to you. So, uh,
Yeah, and also network a little, connect with other artists,
oh yeah,
because
it
I
doesn't
think is
hurt.
also
Yeah, no,
important.
totally. It's. I mean,
Yeah.
if anybody's listening to my advice over the last couple of years, I definitely feel like every opportunity I've been handed recently has came through going to events and stuff like
Yeah.
Lightbox, THU, initial workshops, IMAG, um, playgrounds. I mean, the list goes on. There's so many events
Yeah.
now, but
Yeah, it's the same for me. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just you meet so many, and then of course, once you start to go initially, you start to build this foundation of like almost like a family mentality. You're seeing like the same faces every time. You're meeting the same
Hmm.
people. You grow these friendships. You get to know people, and especially I think because I spent so many years networking online, doing the podcast, interviewing people. When I got the chance to go to America and go to LA, a lot of the guys I
Hmm.
caught up with was like it was the first time I was actually meeting them in person. So,
Oh
because
wow, yeah.
I spent so much time talking to them online, it was like, oh my god, how's it going? And hugging these guys that I hadn't met in
That's
person
so
before.
cool. Yeah.
So it was like, and especially getting to go, Blizzard and meet all the people that I'd networked with there and have lunch with them, and it was just so good. So yeah, I definitely feel like building these relationships online early are really good. Even getting to know a couple of key people and just keeping them on your radar, because eventually when you start making
Mm.
really good work, if you're on their radar and they know you very well and you've got a kind of reputation or a bottle with them, then when you start making good things, they can start recommending you for jobs, or they can pass something along your way that you might like or maybe good at.
Yeah,
So
that's That's basically how it goes. Yeah, for me
Yeah.
as well. I think most of my jobs came through friends that kind of knew what I could do. They
Right.
knew what my strength was,
Hmm.
and so they recommended me to their whoever approached them, and they couldn't do it.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's very important. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Okay, a grand note to end on. It was a very good talk and a very good conversation. Thank you again, Samma, for coming on. It was
Yeah, of course. It
absolute
was a
pleasure
joy.
talking to you. Yeah, it was really good. You guys who are listening along in the podcast, wherever you're listening to, check us out on all the platforms we're available on, which is a lot. There's a lot of podcast platforms we're on. We're mostly on YouTube, where we put a lot of these up as video form as well. If you have any questions for Samma, you can leave them down below. I'll leave all these links and details if you want to get in touch or ask any questions. I'm sure he's always open to that. And then again, just hope you guys are doing well in all parts of the world. I know it's a horribly shit time right now for a lot of people, but we're just trying to stay as positive as we can here on the Artcast, and hope you guys are all staying safe and calm and collected. And again, thanks to Samma and you guys for listening, and we'll see you guys later. Okay, bye.